Hello, my name is Meg and welcome to my YouTube channel. Hello, my name is Meg and I am the yarn dyer behind the name Megs & Co. and I am so excited that you're here with me today. I am currently have nothing in the pans, but I plan to have some roving in the pans today, and I thought, why not bring you guys along on how I'm going to dye this up. So today I am working with this pile of unraveling Polwarth. This is Organic Polwarth. It is combed top. It is absolutely luscious. This whole thing just fell apart, so I'm going to wind this all back together. So I've already weighed this out. I always weigh my fiber so that I know exactly how much dye to use, because all of my recipes are dyes, or a gram of dye per pound of fiber. So this has been weighed out. This is actually 12 ounces of fiber, so it's a little under a pound, but Polwarth tends to be very, very fluffy, and so I don't like to add a whole pound to each pan, because otherwise it just packs down and compresses the fiber and makes it a little trickier to spin with. My pans are currently cold, but I do have my citric acid added to the water, so I'm going to give it just a little stir, just to make sure that everything is all mixed up together. We don't want any pockets of acid that are a little bit different pH than somewhere else. And then I've also already mixed up my first color. So when I'm dyeing roving or combed top or any kind of unspun fiber, I find that the least amount that you can agitate it around in the pan, the better. For one, agitation leads to felting, which we absolutely do not want. And it's also, as you could tell from me just trying to get it over here, it's kind of tricky to work with because it's just a big fluff ball of fiber. So what I try to do to get the same tonal effect that I love on my yarn, to get that on the fiber, is that instead of adding a color and flipping and adding a color and flipping, I do what I call the sandwich method, where I add a color to the pan, add the fiber, and then we'll layer additional colors on top and kind of push and work them into the fiber. I think it creates a really neat effect, and you still get lots of tonality. And then, especially because you're going to spin it up, you're going to mix and blend it all together, which is going to make it even more tonal and more beautiful. So let's get going. So today I am dyeing up Cranberry. It's a very, very deep red. And so I used a couple different red dyes to get this color. So this is a very kind of true red. It reminds me of like a lipstick red. So this is what I'm going to start for our base layer. It's really good. And look at that red. This is like vampire kiss red. I love it. So I'm going to mix this up really good. Hands are full. And I do tend to work with a lot more water in the pans when I am dyeing fiber, because I want everything to be really immersed down and properly soaked. So like I said, my pans are cold. I don't want to shock the fiber. I don't want to felt the fiber. I want to bring the heat up nice and slowly and gently. So yeah, now we got to start adding this. So this has already been pre-weighed. So I know that this current rope is 12 ounces. So I'm just going to add it to the pan. The fiber is going to float on top for a bit until it starts to absorb water. So I kind of use that to my advantage to really pack this in. So I just keep adding it to the top and pushing it to the side. At first it seems impossible to get all of this fiber in the pan, but it does go in. Some fibers are definitely much fluffier than others. So something like a Corriedale is a little bit more compact in how it lays when it's combed. So sometimes I can get a full pound into the pan, but something like Polwarth, even BFL, sometimes I'll do even less, maybe like 8 ounces of fiber, because I don't want to compress and compact the roving or the combed top in the pan, because we want nice fluffy fiber to spin with or to felt with, whatever craft inspires you. So this particular batch is actually a custom order request from a customer that I met at Woolen Folk a couple weeks ago. I'm assuming that she is going to spin this up for a sweater. Probably shouldn't assume, but let's just assume that, because it's fun to imagine that this is going to become a beautiful, beautiful sweater. So just keep adding, working nice and slow. You know, as my hands get a little wet, they do start to kind of stick to the fiber, so, and I don't want to pull it apart at all. So you just work slow, and I just keep kind of gently zhuzhing it down and over. Yeah, this is really fluffy. I'm actually wondering if 12 ounces is a little too much. Let's see what we can get, and then what I'll do is I'll weigh what didn't go into the pan, and that's how I'll know exactly how much I dyed. But I think we can get this. So I'm just smushing it down into that dye. I really want like just the bottom to be absorbing the majority of this colorway to get that tonal effect. So I don't want it to be like too much on the top, but I do gotta get some more. Well, we got a lot to go.
I've been thinking about myself today, thinking how I changed, how I really don't care if you are here or if you don't stay. Now I'm feeling those winter blues, but I don't wanna cry. All we ever do is laugh it off, and I'm sick and I don't know why. You remember that night we met? I thought you looked so...
Okay, we got it all in the pan. It kind of looks like something out of a horror show right now, I'm not gonna lie, but we got it in. So I'm gonna just kind of slowly push it into the water. I want that dye to really be striking the bottom, not coming all the way up to the top, but I need this to start getting wet, because wet fiber is what is needed for that dye to strike. And I'm also going to go ahead and turn on the heat. Now Polwarth tends to be a little bit of a finicky fiber in that it's a little bit more heat sensitive than some of the other fiber that I've dyed. I'm not going to lie, I burned my very first batch of Polwarth. It was not good. So I'm only going to put the heat on to about half where I normally put it when I'm dyeing like a superwash yarn that can take a ton of heat. This is also going to bring the heat up nice and slowly and gently, and it's going to encourage a little bit of a slower striking of the dye, which should also give us some really good tonal effects underneath all of this floofy fluff. So I'm going to put the covers on, and I'm going to let this do its magic and heat up probably for about a good half hour so that it's nice and hot. And then I'm going to mix up my next color, and I'll be right back. Okay, so the pants have been sitting for about a half hour. So they're not super hot because we have them on the slow heat, but they're pretty warm. I can hear some bubbling going on. So it's time to add our next color. Before I do that, I want to push the rest of this in the water because I want this to be wet. And now that it's hot, it's actually a little difficult to do this. Sometimes I push it in the water like while it's still warming, but some days like today I wait. It's not too bad, but it can get really hot, so you just want to be careful once that heat is on. Ooh, that was a little hot spot. And this is just a non-slotted spoon that I'm using to just push it. And I can see as I'm pushing it that some spots still have quite a bit of dye, but other spots are pushing through clear. So I'm glad that the red below is starting to exhaust into the fiber. So as I'm peeking down into those lower layers, I can see that it's a very nice and deep lipstick red. So it's going to look really pretty, especially compared to this deep red that we're going to pour on top of it. So normally when I'm dyeing yarn, I'll add in layers. I like to work lightest to darkest. That way you get to see little pops and peaks of those light colors that are coming through behind the dark color. Once a dye molecule has bonded to its place on the protein fiber, it will actually displace the next color. So by adding some light colors first, all of those light colors are going to come through any darker color that you put over them, because the darker color is not going to just layer on top, it's going to layer next to it. So normally when I'm dyeing yarn, I'd add a color, I would flip, add a color, flip, add a color, and keep going until I'm satisfied. So to mimic that, we did our bottom color first, and so my recipe for this color on yarn would call for a mid-tone red to go on. I'd flip and then do my darkest. Since I don't want to flip this, because you can see how difficult it was to get it into the pan, it's going to be kind of a hot mess if I try to flip this fiber over. So what I'm going to do is add the color in striped layers, and that way it'll mimic that same tonal effect. And then as it continues to absorb into the fiber, those middle layers should look really cool, especially as it's getting spun up. So let's get to it. So this is a mid-tone red. You can see it's much darker than the first red that we added, and there's really no like rhyme or reason to this. I'm just gonna kind of pick a spot and pour a nice stripe, pick another spot and pour another nice stripe. I don't like to have hard edges, so I'm going to take my spoon and work this into the fiber, because I don't want to have a hard edge stripe. I just want to have a moving blend of color. So I'm just going to carefully push. I'm also kind of pushing this in so that it is getting into those under layers of fiber. You can even kind of open up if it's not too hot to really get it into all of those layers so that it's penetrating right down. This still is not very hot, so it's not going to strike fast, which is nice. That will allow it time to get into that middle. There will probably be a little bit of white space left, but there shouldn't be too much. It should be a pretty deep red. And by keeping the temperature cooler as we're adding the dye, that's going to help prevent white space, because it's going to give the dye time to work down into the fiber rather than striking immediately where it's been poured. This is going to look nice. This is one of my favorite colors. This color is Cranberry, and it's a color that I dyed first on yarn back in November, December of last year as part of my 2021 holiday collection. I've loved it so much that I've actually kept it around year-round. It's a beautiful red. It's deep, but with little pops of lighter colors I think are just so fun. So this is a very dark yarn. This is a very deep red, and that's mixed with a little bit of black. And so as I pour it, it's actually going to look really dark. Don't be alarmed. This color tends to not lift, but it looks so much darker in the pan than it really is. Once it's dried, it's just this like Cabernet red that's really beautiful. So I'm just kind of spreading this all around and focusing on spots that I didn't add that previous color. But this is a beautiful deep dark red, so I definitely want it to get kind of everywhere. Moving the fiber around very carefully. Don't want anything to felt. Heat and agitation causes felting, so all of the movements that you do need to be very slow, gentle, and again, because I don't have a lot of heat on at the moment, that's also going to help. Very careful because it is a little warm on my hands. Ooh, that spot's hot. Again, just kind of very gently massaging, opening up some of these layers because this is a color that I don't necessarily want to have a lot of white spots on. So kind of separating, letting that dye seep down in. Look at the difference. And this is going to look so cool because a lot of this red is going to come through. It's like magic. It really is like magic. I love dyeing protein fibers. It's funny how it almost looks purple, and I promise you that there is no purple in this color. That one end is hot. Oh, this is gonna look so good. So yeah, as I'm pulling it apart, I can see that there's definitely lots and lots of that bright red in all those cracks and crevices. It's gonna look beautiful. So I'm gonna let this sit probably for a full 45 minutes to an hour because I want it to get nice and hot. I want all of that dye to exhaust. And then I'm going to do a very slow cool where essentially I'm just gonna let it sit at room temperature overnight and then wash it up tomorrow, hang it. It takes about 2 days to completely dry, and I will check back in and show you what it looks like. Thank you so much for joining me.